Hello there, John Coturillo here, the counsellor of your listener. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Today I'm going to be discussing the topic of frugality and my philosophy on it and how I believe one can be more responsible with money. Now, as per usual, this is not financial advice. If you have concerns of any nature, financial or otherwise, seek professional help. I'm not trying to tell you what to think, what to do. That's your responsibility. But I'm here to discuss perspectives and also give my philosophy on how I have a good relationship with money. Now, frugality is one of the most important principles of my life philosophy, and one of the strongest life philosophies I have is waste absolutely nothing. Okay, regardless of the financial climate, regardless of how abundant the money is, do not put anything to waste. For me, it's important for a number of reasons. One, it disciplines you to be constantly thinking about how to do what you do in the best possible way. Because if you reach a situation in which you must waste as little as possible, that mindset of constantly analysing how can I waste as little as possible will help. It'll become a habit. That personal discipline is also part of a bigger life philosophy that I value, which is to seek excellence. Seek to do whatever you do as well as possible, and part of doing something well involves efficiency. If you can do something better by achieving the same outcome but with less waste, why don't you? Another reason is that it shows gratitude. I'm very grateful for what I have, and one of the ways that I show gratitude back to the world for what I have is by not constantly seeking what I don't need. Now, something that's really difficult to discuss, and I know this because having worked in social services, I've met and worked with a lot of people who are struggling financially. And I'm not looking to blame them or say that people only fall on hard times because it's their own fault. People do struggle financially, and I'm not denying that sometimes the economy and the economic situation has a lot of responsibility in that. A problem that complicates this issue, though, is that I've very seldom seen people who can manage money well, and in honesty, it doesn't seem to be a mathematical problem. It doesn't seem to be that they don't know how to count or that they don't know how to budget. It's a philosophical problem. The philosophical problem is that they can't very well delineate the nuances between what they need and what they desire. And often what happens is people base what they should buy and what they want to buy on their desire and not their needs. They base it on how much they can afford. What I mean by that is, think about two people who have exactly the same basic needs in life, but they earn radically different amounts of money each year. I can't say this statistically, okay, but my intuition, just based on how I've seen the world, this is just an intuition, my intuition is that the person who earns more will probably be used to spending more on themselves and will base their desire on what is needed in life based on what they're used to spending on themselves. Even if both people have exactly the same needs and can essentially spend exactly the same amount of money each month and each year to fulfill those needs, and that the person who earns significantly less still feels that their needs are fulfilled, the fact that the other person earns more will bias their judgment of what they think is necessary in life and the minimum with which they are willing to live. And the problem of not being aware of this philosophical flaw that we might have is that it leads people to having a sense of entitlement, that they complain, well, the cost of living is too high. But they also can't delineate where their responsibility to manage their money well ends and the economy's responsibility to create prosperous conditions starts. And the difficulty here is, again, not that the economy is not responsible for anything, because again, just because you're struggling financially doesn't mean it's your fault. But the fact that a lot of people have that philosophical flaw and they can't manage money well means that it's difficult to really tell how much they should justifiably be asking of society, because they haven't taken every feasible step that they could to manage their own money well. Now, I have a story to tell from my distant past. Many years ago, I went to have dinner with a friend, and this was at a time when I wasn't in the best situation in life, and they at the time were actually earning more money than I was. I wasn't dirt poor, and I hadn't exactly landed myself in trouble. It's just that our situations were in that way. All throughout dinner, they were constantly complaining about capitalism and the economy and how society oppresses us. And I earn $70,000 a year and I'm, struggling financially and I can't afford things. I didn't know what it was like to be them, so I just listened because I didn't want to have an argument with them. I was on good terms with them. Anyway, later that night we decided to go back to their apartment to have some more conversation and have coffee, and I stepped into their apartment and the first thing I noticed was they had left on the lights. For all the hours that they were away from home, they were using that electricity. Then they called to their smart home hub, which was voice activated and was left on. And of course the Wi-Fi was left on because everything was connected wirelessly, and asked them to play music. They'd also bought a new phone recently, significantly expensive one. They had bought it from someone interstate, it was a used one. They used that as a reason to actually travel interstate to go pick it up rather than having it shipped. And all I could think was, how do you know how much the economy is responsible for your financial struggle if you're buying all this that you don't need? Your house is full of things you just don't need, right? A lot of these things are fun, but it's not necessary. You know, when you open the door, before you step in and trip over something, you could just put your hand around the corner on the wall and feel for the light switch. There's one right there next to the door. You could then go and manually turn on the Wi-Fi, wait 60 seconds for it to initiate, and then turn on the music manually. In the end, this technology uses power. It regularly breaks because, technology isn't designed to last anymore. You have to constantly replace it. The problem with the human mind is that it is so driven by desire and short-term gratification, pleasurable sensations and emotions. When it would actually be a good idea to make a sacrifice to survive, our mind justifies it as, we can't do that because it's a need. In reality, most of what we have and most of what people think they need to live isn't a need, it's a desire. And the long-term sense of survivability and the long-term benefit of being able to be financially stable and secure in the long term is not enough to override many people's desire for short-term gratification. Here's a difficult truth though. Possessions and quick thrills won't make you happy. And I've seen so many people who own more than I do who are absolutely miserable. And I can see right in through them that it's a philosophical issue that's causing that. They haven't found the true meaning of their life, which I'm not prescribing that there's one true meaning. It's something that's subjective to them, but it's something wholesome that they have not found yet. They haven't found the right relationships with other people. They haven't found the right endeavour to pursue that actually means something. And because they're not getting that long-term pleasure, they're substituting short-term pleasure because they want quick thrills. But when you accept those short-term solutions, those solutions start to control you because you constantly want more of them. When you're fed up and bored with one piece of technology, you're constantly looking for the next. When you choose a partner based on how physically attractive they are rather than the quality of the emotional and intellectual connection, eventually they won't be attractive enough for you. You'll look for another one. True happiness comes from within you and of nature. Marveling at the truly wondrous things in the world, like people, like animals, like the fact that you can walk, like the fact that you can pursue higher beings, like creating things, creating benefits for other people. That's what's truly wondrous, and that's what makes you truly happy. Not possessions, not spending money. There are a number of radical philosophies by which I live, and again, I'm not going to advise you to do anything that is outside your area of expertise or that could be unsafe for you, but I'm just going to tell you how I live my life. If any of this inspires you, great. If not, I encourage you to find what works for you with the necessary advice if need be. But this is how I live my life. First of all, we all need to acknowledge that sometimes we make excuses, and that when we say we need something, what we actually mean is we desire something because it would give us such a sense of pleasure in the present that we are telling ourselves that we need it. I learned to fix possessions so that when something breaks, I don't necessarily need to dispose of it, I can fix it. For example, I learned to, fix a shelf in my cupboard. I didn't have to call a handyman, I didn't have to buy a new cupboard or a new shelf or a new bracket. I found leftover materials that were lying around and I found a way to fix it. Instead of having a bathroom cupboard installed, I took an old office cabinet and I placed it on the side of the bathtub and I used some cardboard underneath it to stop it from tilting. Whether it's safe or not, that's for me to worry about. I'm not going to say you should do the same. But that's how I save money on the parts and labour of having a new bathroom cabinet installed. I needed a new base for my bed. I learned to build one myself. It cost me less than buying a new bed. Also, having a home full of goods that aren't perfectly matched or are second-hand or aren't perfect but still safe and functional is a good philosophy. None of the furniture in my house matches. It was all from a different source, right? I wasn't focused on making sure everything matched, and I wasn't focused on making sure everything was perfect. Some pieces have some blemishes in there. The desk at which I'm sitting right now as I record this doesn't have the casters on it. They broke. So I took them off and just made sure I placed it in a location that I knew was going to be satisfactory for me so I wouldn't have to move it. And I put some cardboard underneath the front to stop it from swaying. It's not the perfect desk. Sometimes it's a little cramped, but I find a way to make it work. The watch that I'm wearing right now, sometimes dirt gets stuck in the crevices. I don't take it to a jeweler. I know how to disassemble it myself and clean it. Something else that I do is finding products or goods that have multiple purposes. So I don't have to own too much because what I do own fulfills the greater number of purposes that I have. So for example, you might have seen on my Instagram page that I'm a big fanatic of Isocol rubbing alcohol. It has multiple purposes. It comes in a spray bottle, so I use it as a glass cleaner. I use it as a hand sanitizer. If I need to clean my earphones or a piece of electronic equipment, I use Isocol on a cotton swab or on a microfiber cloth. I don't have multiple spray and wipe products for all the different parts of my house. If I don't need strong disinfection and I just need to clean off any surface residue and make sure that everything's fresh and smells clean, I have my own homemade spray, which is mostly water and a combination of eucalyptus and clove oil. The clove oil is intended to prevent the buildup of mold, and I clean my entire kitchen and my entire bathroom with that regularly. It costs me very little because I don't have to use much of the oil because it's so concentrated and it serves multiple purposes. My phone is my alarm clock, but what happens if it doesn't sound in the morning? What if there's a glitch? I don't buy a second alarm clock, I just made sure that I bought a watch that had an alarm in it. So both sound at the same time in the morning. If one doesn't sound for some reason, at least the other one's a backup. I don't have a home full of clocks, I just have one watch that I wear always. I have one pump bottle full of shower gel that also acts as a shampoo. If you ever see me, you'd know that I don't have enough hair to really buy separate shampoo, but that's part of it. That's one of the reasons why I don't have much hair, because it's so much cheaper for me to shave my own head every week and ensure that it's nice and clean and short. That's my hair wash and my body wash, and it's also my regular hand wash. That one product does everything for me. Is it the most glamorous? No, but I'm always clean. I always have what I need. Denying treats. Yes, I know this is difficult for some people, but there's no soft drink in my home. There's no chocolate in my home. Even though I love those foods and drinks, I reserve those for special occasions when I'm sitting down with the people I love and we enjoy them together. Why? Because I don't need them in my life. Yes, you need pleasure every now and again. It's good for my mental health, but I reserve times at which I treat myself, and that keeps me well balanced. That means that I get my shot of reasonable pleasure when I need it. But I'm not constantly giving in to the desire for pleasure. People sometimes ask, how do you enjoy life if you don't have anything? Here's an important part of my philosophy. I choose hobbies that don't cost too much. Or, if you want to have a hobby that costs something, one might try to choose something that offers some kind of return. So for example, I don't game, I don't stream shows, I don't have a television, I don't subscribe to anything, I'm not a member of any clubs. And I have to make a really strong argument to myself and demonstrate to myself that I will commit to something before I spend money on a hobby. For my podcast, I don't have a studio for it. I'm not using audiophile grade equipment, and yet people hear me loudly and clearly. They understand what I'm saying. Again, I'm not glamorous, but I do what has to be done. People hear what I have to say. I'm able to achieve my basic purpose. And I'm standing as an example that if you wanted to start a podcast, you could take whatever you have in your home and start a podcast if you wanted to. Another important thing that I do is I learn to do things by myself. Now, again, every person's needs are different, so you get the right advice before making decisions about what's right for you. But I don't have a personal trainer, I don't have a gym membership. I have an exercise routine that I conduct on a regular basis throughout the week. I plan my diet every week. I have a healthy, balanced diet. Never had any problems with regard to diet, never had any problems with regard to my physique. Yes, I'm awfully lucky, but I've also made concerted efforts to learn what I need to do to keep myself healthy. And I do it, but I learn to do it myself. So I'm not constantly relying on other people, I know what I need to do. When I need to spend money on something, I make sure I conduct as much research as I need to, not just to know that it's going to do what I need, but also what the long-term ramifications of buying it are. Is it going to be available in the long term? If it's a product, a spare part's going to be available. Is it adaptable to other needs? Can I maintain it myself, or do I need somebody else to maintain it for me? I try to find what's of the best quality for the price that I'm looking to pay. That way, I know whether it's going to cost me more in the long term because because it's of poor quality and I'll need to buy more of it, or if it's going to save me money in the long term because if I spend money on it now, it's going to last longer. I know those long-term implications. I try to find the best price for it, whether that's buying online or buying in a shop. And if I buy online, am I able to return something if something goes wrong? How easy is it to redeem the warranty if I need to? I'll know what I need before I get to the shop. I don't let somebody else sell me on what they think I need. I'll know the different features that are necessary for me, and I'll compare the different options before I actually go and buy. A simple task that I do is I budget. I know what all my regular expenses are, regardless of how small they may seem, and I'll know how much they will be in a year, and then I divide them into periods, like months and fortnights, so that I know roughly how much I need each fortnight to, on average, to be able to fulfill my regular expenses. And just because I have money doesn't mean I spend it. Now, I'm by no means filthy rich. Being filthy rich is something that in reality is only reserved for a minority of people. But I'm happy and I have what I need. And that in itself is such a great reason for me to be grateful every day, because I feel that gratitude. Now, I believe in choice. I'm all for prosperity. I'm not saying that you should feel ashamed for owning things. I'm not saying that I can tell you what your needs are. I'm not telling you what to do. You're responsible for what you do and what you think. But I know that these philosophies have led me to have a healthy mind, and I can see that they work. So I'm all for freedom, but with freedom also comes responsibility. And it's a good idea, and it's imperative that we at least consider, if we're going to take the liberty of something, also understand that liberty may come with consequences. And if we bear negative consequences because we've exercised our liberty, is it really society that has to take responsibility for it, or should we rightly take responsibility for it? So thank you for joining me for this episode. As per usual, if you have any concerns about yourself, financially or otherwise, please do not take what you see on the internet as advice. Seek advice from a professional. I'm not here to tell you what to think or what to do. That's your responsibility. If you have a view that's either similar to mine or different, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to write to me if you have an idea of what could be discussed on the show, or if you'd like to contribute or collaborate with me. But until next time, take care.